So this is a Shabbat before Remembrance Day, which is an important Shabbat for us at Beth Tikvah. And we've invited a very important and interesting speaker who will be speaking both today and now at the sermon slot and following Kiddush. This is not for guests of the Frieds. Sorry, we'll send you a recording. You have to go to the lunch. But for other members of the congregation who are coming to the congregational Kiddush, I'm going to be speaking with the captain after Kiddush, and I'll announce that. I just want to thank Ellen Besner, who was instrumental in helping us get Captain Friedberg here. Ellen is a wonderful friend of the shul, and I know there's a lot of Ellen Besner fans here too, so thank you, Ellen, for your help. And I want to recognize today everybody who is here. There's a bunch of people wearing poppies, but there's some people here that I know serve our country in very profound ways. There's veterans who are here today, members of paramedical services and police services and fire services. There's a lot of people in our community who don't get sufficient acknowledgement for the services and the sacrifice that they performed and continue to perform for the safety and welfare of all of us. And in a very, very dangerous world, we in Canada have the lives that we do because of the principles that people are willing to stand up and fight for. So be reminded of that, if not every single day, at least in commemoration of Remembrance Day. Our speaker today is Captain Yehuda Friedberg. Raised in Italy and Canada, he has been a member of the Canadian Armed Forces since 2007. He has served with the 48th Highlanders of Canada, 2nd Intelligence Convoy, 32nd Brigade Battle School, and the 32 Signal Regiment. His roles have included Company 2IC, Infantry Officer, Training Officer, Intelligence Support Team Commander, and Cyber Troop Commander. He recently served as the 4th Canadian Division of JG5 Operations Officer. I'll just pretend like I know what all of this means. Captain Friedberg will speak about his efforts over the past year, assisting in the evacuation of 1,500 Afghans, including the last Jewish family of Afghanistan, and his role in setting up an organization called Maria Aid and the Maria Report, not-for-profits groups that are helping efforts today with the war in Ukraine. We're very honored to have him here. Captain Friedman, mic is yours.
Thank you. Well, Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for being here and giving me a platform to speak. As you know, it's Remembrance Day in Canada, and well, not today, but it's when we celebrate it, the first weekend before the date itself. So on the 11th of November, at the 11th hour, we'll recognize the fallen and stand for a moment of silence. So we won't do that today, but I do want to thank you for the time, Rabbi. In this particular instance, I would just like to reflect on the commitments and the sacrifices of Canadian soldiers throughout our history for the defense of freedom and democracy. It isn't an easy task. Mine, as the rabbi pointed out, a lot of letters means that I command a lot of staplers and push papers around, whereas our forebears did a lot more work on the ground, fighting, in Caen and Passchendaele, and in World War II on the beaches of Normandy and in Italy. So the legacy of Canadians and the Canadian military is a great one. A lot of people ask me, how do we compare? I don't like to compare, but all around the world, everywhere I've been, any foreign military I've ever met, any officers or NCMs from other armies or navies always say, we love the Canadians. They're an incredible bunch. We're well trained, we're dedicated, we're motivated, and in effect, we're a representation of our society. So the military represents society, and you see an ever-inclusive military in Canada. You see an openness, an acceptance of past wrongdoings, and a movement towards a better future. So that's what I think the military means for us today. And I wanted to recognize, obviously, the veterans of recent past who've either served in Bosnia or in Afghanistan or in Kosovo, all sorts of commitments. A lot of people are unaware, but Canadians are all over the world. We have dozens of missions all over the world, and it's not just peacekeeping in the sense of walking around in a blue helmet. Our troops and our sailors and our airmen and women put their lives on the line to defend the values that we hold so dear. So on this Remembrance Day, I'd ask that everyone, or next week, reflect on the sacrifices and the commitments. And it's not just about war fighting, it's about being away from home for months and years sometimes, and it affects your family. I too go away, and I have to miss my children growing up for months at a time. But it's a commitment we make when we sign up and join. So I think we have a lot to be proud of, and I'll circle and switch gears into the Jewish community. The contribution of Jewish Canadians to the Canadian military is quite profound, whether it be in World War I or World War II. Jewish Canadians signed up to fight and defend Canada on a greater proportion than other groups. Not to besmirch anyone's commitment, but often Jewish people are the canary in the coal mine sometimes. So we tend to find and see and recognize dangers a little sooner than other people might. So I'm proud to be an officer in the Canadian military and follow in the footsteps of other Canadian Jewish people who are serving our country. The military has come a long way. Kosher food is much easier to get now, and it's a reflection of society. And on that note, I will just summarize. So my work as from an infantry officer to being attached to an intelligence company, not a convoy, but it's fine. So we weren't going anywhere. We were sitting around. And then I currently am a signals officer. So that's signals communications. That's satellite communications. And Canada's ramping up its capabilities in that regard. Obviously, most people can, if you read the news or watch the news, you know that the next bound that we're going through is going to be things like cyber attacks from foreign, powers, not particularly nice to Canada. So that's kind of the forward edge of the battle space. Recently, I was, and we'll talk about it after, but for those interested, I met a man who was an Afghan, and he had said that he liked he didn't mean it in a bad way. He says, "I like your Jew hat." He meant my kippah, and I said, "Wow, that's very nice of you." I didn't know where this was going. He meant he didn't understand what to call it. And then he finished by saying, "I am a Jew." And I said, "Oh, I don't know about that either." I was, well, okay. And we became friends. And then he told me the story that his mother was a Jewish woman living in Afghanistan, and she had 10 kids. And I thought that was really weird because I am pretty dialed into who was where in Afghanistan. And it's an unfortunate story. Apparently, mother was kidnapped and taken off, and she was married off, and then she had a new life. But she always maintained this connection to Judaism and told her kids about it. And then half of the kids moved to Canada in the 90s, and half of them stayed there. So it was a unique story, and I didn't really believe it at first until I did some digging. When the Taliban came back the second time, they had threatened to, unfortunately, kill the mother. So we began an operation. This is when I say we, this is personal. This is me, some friends, totally. I could say it's anchored in the ethics and the values that we teach in the military, but it's nothing to do with the military. This is just a personal attempt and effort to help out. And as a result, I made a lot of friends along the way. We found hundreds of people. In fact, we had some people that were going to come today. A gentleman whose company donated dozens of apartments rent-free for a year. It's incredible. Like we're talking $3,000-4,000 a month times 15. Huge commitments. Jewish community especially really dug in, reached out to different groups and NGOs, and we were able to get the 35 family members out of Afghanistan, and then on top of it another 1,450. It's a long story. We can talk about it later. And then circling back to like personal efforts to do good things and volunteer work, some of us who are doing the Afghanistan withdrawal and helping to evacuate people through NGOs, we decided to help in the Ukraine situation, and as a result we've stood up an NGO that provides incredible amounts of non-lethal humanitarian aid to Ukraine, and I ended up finding myself making a Twitter space called Maria Report, where there's 40, 50 volunteers around the world working 24 hours a day, around the clock, all for 8 months, being an information space. So a lot of really amazing things have happened, and I think the rabbi wanted to highlight that, and I think that's great. But I'm more than happy to answer questions later. But other than that, thank you again for recognizing the Canadian Armed Forces and the things that we do to represent Canada. And other than that, thank you. Shabbat Shalom.